Can you hear me up the back? Go like this if you can hear me. Welcome to Power Shift, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today. It's so good to look out on your sea of smiling faces. So today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the AYCC, but I'm not going to talk to you about climate science, because the science, frankly, is settled, and we all know that. What I'm going to talk to you today about is stories, because stories are what change people's hearts and minds, and it's what brought me to care about climate change. So first I'm going to start with my story. I was that kid who grew up in the country and had no idea what to do with my life. I grew up in Mildura in northwest Victoria on the beautiful Murray River. And I wanted to do something creative. I wanted to do something meaningful. I wanted to do something with my life that made a difference. But I had no idea what that was. I very distinctly remember that day in Year 12 where you have to decide which university course you're going to do. And my dad forced me to sit at the computer and said, "Ellen, you are going to university, I don't care what you study, just put in something today, the deadline's 5 o'clock, you're going to miss out." And I looked at that overwhelming list of courses, and I decided to go to University of Melbourne and study Spanish and genetics. And I usually get the same reaction. People say, "Okay, how did you go from studying Spanish and genetics to being the National Director of Australia's largest youth-led organisation?" Well, it started at the University of Melbourne, but it had nothing to do with what I studied. When I was at the University of Melbourne, I fell into the Environment Collective, and it was the best thing that could have happened to me. I fell into a campaign to try and get the University of Melbourne to become carbon neutral. And this was my first experience of young people being able to make a significant difference, but also of the barriers that young people face in trying to create change. So we decided that our university should be powered 100% by green energy. And we wrote this beautiful Word document that said this is how much it's going to cost, and this is where you could buy it from, and this is how much carbon emissions it would save if you bought 100% green power. And we took it to the people at Melbourne University, and they said, there isn't enough renewable energy in the grid to power Melbourne University with green power. And we said, "Okay, you're a big campus, but don't flatter yourself, you're not that big." And we got an expert in to tell them that there was indeed enough energy in the grid to power them. So we went back, and they said, "Actually, it's going to cost too much." We said, "Okay, that's a legitimate concern." So we found out how much it would cost, and we got an energy auditor to come in and tell the university how much energy they could actually save, and then they could put all that money into renewable energy, and it wouldn't cost them an extra cent. The auditor also found some solar panels in the physics building that weren't even plugged in. And we went back and they said, "Sorry, we're still not going to do this because young people don't care, the students don't care." And we said, "Well, we're the Environment Collective, we care, and we're going to show you that we care." So one of the things we did was culture jamming. Well, my clicker's not working. Can you click the next slide, please? So this was the marketing campaign at the University of Melbourne. The evolution starts here. And we decided to change it to, next slide, the pollution starts here. No, back one. We collected signatures from students all across the campus. We got 4,000 people to sign on, 10% of the student population. We got 1,000 Year 12 students to sign during O Week, to show that they wanted to go to university powered by green energy. We got alumni on board, we got old students on board, we got staff and academics on board. And we finally, with all this pressure, we took it to the University Council, and they agreed to go carbon neutral by 2030, which is a bit late, but they did agree to put $3.5 million into green energy and clean energy initiatives at the campus. So that was my first taste of what it felt like to win things as a young person. And at the same time, I heard about this woman called Anna Rose, who's actually going to speak after me. And she was at the University of Sydney doing the same thing, and she'd won $1 million for clean energy. And she was starting something called the Australian Youth Climate Coalition. And I thought, that's something that I want to be part of. So I rang up my friend Ben, who I knew was part of it, and I said, "I'd love to be involved, how can I help?" And he said, "Well, we're sending a team to the United Nations climate change talks in Bali, where RUD's going to sign the Kyoto Protocol. Do you want to come along?" I said, "Absolutely, of course." So we all went and bought these woolen suits, and we thought, straight from the university, we don't go to the state government or the national government, let's just go straight to the UN, I'm sure we can solve it there, the 9 of us. So we bought these suits, and we bought our flights to Bali. And the suits were completely inappropriate because it was 35 degrees. And I will never forget the plenary that I walked in on on the first few days of that conference. It's this huge room where everyone sits up there with their signs saying Australia, Azerbaijan, Austria. And these negotiators and heads of states and diplomats sat there negotiating for 2 hours over where to put the comma in a sentence. And I thought, this is the most urgent issue that I face for my future and of our generation. How can you not see the urgency? So we decided to hold our own forum, where we'd get young people who were there to stand up and tell stories of how young people around the world are actually doing something to solve climate change. And we got up and all these people from around the world told stories like mine of things they'd done in their own communities. And at the end we asked if there were any questions. And after a while this young woman stood up and she said, "Hi, my name's Claire." And this is Claire. And she said, "I come from Kiribati, which is a collection of islands in the Central Pacific. And my island is only 2 metres above sea level. And because of climate change, rising sea levels, changed weather patterns, increased king tides, inundating our water, I'm not going to be able to die in the place where I was born. And thank you to you young people for trying to do something about that." And of course that floored us all. One, we were very humbled. She'd come all this way. She didn't have much money to share her story. But secondly, we felt guilty because really I hadn't done that much. I was just this punk university kid who thought she was making a difference. And this made me step up. I thought, this is not just about the environment, this is about people. But it wasn't all bad news that I heard at Bali. I met 6 young people from Vermont in the US. And they were university students like me who were learning about climate change. And then they graduated and they didn't want to get real jobs. They wanted to get jobs for the planet. And at the time, science was telling us that countries like the US needed to reduce their emissions 80% by 2050. So they wrote this lovely paper and they took it to their members of Congress and said, "You should reduce emissions 80% by 2050. Congress just laughed at them and said, "Absolutely not. The politics is so far away from this, we'll never make it happen, you're dreaming." And they said, "Okay, sounds like people aren't being loud enough in telling them that Americans want this. What if we could organise a day where we had, say, 200 groups of people all around the country on the same day sending the same message? We'd invite politicians and journalists along to an event, we'd hold up a banner, and they would see that if we could get some media attention to this, maybe Congress would see that we want this to happen." So they started putting the word out to their friends and they built a website to collect the photos of that day that came in. And on that day, in April 2007, their website absolutely crashed. They had over 1,400 photos, just like this one, come in. Photos on the tops of mountains in the snow, people scuba diving off the Florida Keys, all with the same message: step it up, Congress, cut carbon 80% by 2050. And they collected these photos and the media coverage, which said it was the largest day of climate action in the country's history. And they took them to Congress and said, "How about now?" And no joke, 2 weeks later, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama and John McCain, who were all vying for the presidential nominee at the time, made public statements saying if they were elected, they would cut carbon emissions 80% by 2050. So we're seeing Obama have a little bit of trouble trying to put that into law now, but that story for me made me realise that young people can change things. So I went back home, graduated from university, and I got a really good job with the Premier. But after a year I decided to quit this really sexy job that I had, because I knew that we didn't need more bureaucrats, we didn't need more scientists. What we needed was a social movement of people, all changing the hearts and minds and the policies of our countries. Because throughout history, changes don't happen overnight. Women have the vote now. We no longer have slaves. Aboriginal people have the vote. All these changes didn't just happen because one day people woke up and said, "Oh, I've changed my mind." Or politicians said, "Actually, slavery is wrong. Let's stop that." It happened because social movements of people, mostly led by young people, pushed for years and decades to make those changes happen. And that's what we need to happen on climate change. So since then, the AYCC has grown from those 9 young people in Bali and a few other friends and volunteers to a movement of people all across the country, including the 1,000 people here at Power Shift today. This was the first Power Shift we held in 2009. It was the moment to kickstart our movement. It was all about bringing people together to connect with other change makers. And this is a dance we did on the steps of the Sydney Opera House, something that we'll do similar on Monday in King George Square. We've done Youth Decide, a huge youth climate vote. 40,000 young people voted for the world they want to inherit. We've sent people to the United Nations. We've done trainings all across the country. We've done a schools program. And we've done an election campaign. And I want to share for you a little story of an election campaign that we ran last year. So last year, at the federal election, about 8 weeks beforehand, we sat down, the AYCC staff and volunteers, and we said, you know, if there's going to be climate action after the election, the only way that's going to happen is if climate change is a top 5 issue actually at the election, in the politician's mind, in the public, and in the media. So we need to make climate change a top 5 issue, like it was when Kevin Rudd was elected. And nobody was talking about climate change. So we thought what we'll do is we'll write all these beautiful press releases about how much we care about climate change, and we'll send them to journalists, and they'll write about it, and it'll be a top 5 issue. So we wrote all these beautiful press releases saying, young people really care about climate change, and we've polled our members, and climate change is a top 5 issue. And we did polls and research. Absolutely none of it got picked up. Journalists said to us, the leaders aren't talking about climate change. We can't print your stuff. Stop sending us your damn press releases. And so we thought, okay, if journalists won't come to us, we need to go to where the journalists are. And where are the journalists? That's right, they're following around Julia Gillard and Tony Abbott. So the most logical solution that we could come up with was to hire every single fluffy elephant costume in the whole country and get our volunteers to stake out where Julia Gillard and Tony Abbott would be and deploy them to follow them around every day, asking them questions about climate change. And funnily enough, it worked. So I want to play you a short clip now about our election campaign so you can get a flavour of what the AYCC does.
Gathered out in front of the press club here a moment ago. They were making a lot more noise, and there were a lot more of them just about 10 minutes ago. We've seen this sort of costume right around the country. It's been following both Tony Abbott and Julia Gillard around, ambushing them.
Look at it. Here it is.
What exactly are you pushing here? Obviously, climate change is a big issue.
Yeah, well, climate change is going to have a huge effect on young Australians in the future. So we're here from the Australian Youth Climate Coalition to tell Tony Abbott that his climate policies are not good enough.
You're never gonna try. There's no reason to doubt, but we're willing to listen. If we screw up this earth, we shall not be forgiven. Need a joke, but we're running out of time. See, we don't wanna step up to this line. So come with us, walking from shame to glory, inspiring our youth to jump in on this journey. Desiring to prove that our children are learning to respect the world as the earth is contending every place with the reason to unite. Hearts pounding in the rhythm, but the time is not. When the promise is made, then it must be delivered. They've seen our breed, we won't concede, believe it when they come down with guns to make a fuss.
You might have heard that on Wednesday our Parliament passed our carbon price legislation through the House of Representatives. It was an historic day. It's so exciting after decades of debate and months of misinformation that we're actually finally starting to do something about climate change. But it is just the first step, and we know we need to do a lot more to transition our country to one that's powered by 100% clean, safe, reliable, renewable energy. And that's what these 3 days is all about. This is the power shift that you've been waiting for. You are the change makers and the generation that our country has been waiting for. And I have no doubt that over the next 3 days, from 9 people in Bali to 900 or more people in Brisbane, that we're the ones who can leave here with a plan about how we're going to push our government, our business, and our communities to be powered by 100% renewable energy. So I wanted to end with a quote from my favourite writer, Paul Hawken, who's going to be in Australia very soon, which is very exciting. He's an amazing environmentalist and writer from the US, and he did a speech, a graduation speech to, I think it was Penn State University in the US. And there's a really good paragraph in it that I want to read to you. He says, "There is invisible writing on the back of the diploma you're about to receive, and in case you didn't bring lemon juice to decode it, I can tell you what it says. You are brilliant, and the earth is hiring. The earth couldn't afford to send recruiters or limos to your school. Instead, it sent you rain, sunsets, ripe cherries, and that unbelievably cute person you're dating. Take the hint. Forget that this task of planet saving is not possible in the time required. Don't be put off by people who know what is not possible. Do what needs to be done, and check to see if it's possible only after you're done. Because working for the earth is not a way to get rich, but it sure is a way to be rich. So thank you and enjoy the next 3 days."